Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. All right, let me get my screen up here. Um, Hang on, just one sec. I gotta see which one it's gonna go to. Okay, this is it. All right. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
All right. Um, Now you got the bigger picture now.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. So back last year, we knew that the target stroke updates were coming. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm Cathi Senter. I'm the stroke coordinator here at Grady. I've been here for just over 2 years. Came here from California where I was in the same role. So I've been doing this for a while. But we just were having some issues. The During the uh, a construction project in the emergency department, we had they had changed the routing when I first came here for our stroke alerts, and they were putting them in a room before going to CT. And then what happened? We got a whole new class of residents and stuff like that, and they to them that was the norm. That was what you did, and so it was like they didn't really have a sense of urgency. So we had looked back historically at our times and just saw that really our times from 2 years prior were better than our times now, and then with the new stricter target stroke guidelines coming up, we just knew that we had to do something. Um, we started working on this, putting everything together. We had a committee with everybody, that every department that's part of the process involved, and we started working on it really in January of this year. Um, by the time we got everybody on the same page, hammered through what everybody's, whose responsibility was what and all that, it ended up being the end of April before we were ready to go live. It was just right a couple of days before the 1st of May. Some of this slideshow that I'm going to show you is part of the educational effort. And I feel like the way that we did the education on this was contributed a lot to our success. Um, so I was watching a race, and you think about, and so this is what I wanted for. Is that's not blank? Why are you not blank? No, you didn't. I don't
Cat,
know why this.
your Kathy, your volume went out.
My volume went out. Okay.
Yes. Okay,
Um,
I can hear you now. It's just a slight echo in the phone. I don't know if that's because it's on speaker, but there's just a slight echo on the phone.
Could be. I'll just pick it up. Okay, so for some reason I can't get this video to play. It was playing earlier and now it's not. So I don't know why. But anyway, so basically, this is what I wanted for our acute stroke team was this pit crew mentality, right? Everybody on the team has one job. That's their job. They get out there, they get it done, and they're back over that wall in seconds. And this is the way we trade our trauma teams. But for some reason, we haven't put this into effect really for stroke. So this is what I wanted for us to try and do here. So we did a huge educational push. We educated everybody in the emergency department, the techs, the nurses, the physicians, the residents, the the PCC, who at our place, that's the paramedic that answers EMS calls, and they're the ones that put out the stroke alerts when somebody comes in. So, I mean, everybody in the ED, everybody in radiology, well, not everybody, the CT techs and the MRI techs, in case we needed to go to MRI, were all part of the education. Phlebotomy was part of the education. All of the stroke attending, stroke residents, stroke fellows, everybody that has any part in the stroke alert process was included in the education effort, and we had everybody do the same thing. And what I want you to see in this was my number one obstacle when I talked to the boots on the ground. Oops, sorry about that. Was, you know, I was an emergency room nurse. And so, you know, when that patient comes in and you're over there and you're starting your IV and you're drawing your blood and you're like, oh, I'm so fast, but I'm doing it all myself. And it's like I'm this superhero, right? Because the patients come in, I've done my ABC assessment, I'm starting the IV, I'm doing all this stuff, and you're doing it all yourself. So it was trying to get people to understand that even though you think that you're being efficient, you're really not. And so I wanted to come up with a way to show them that that's not so, that if one person has to do everything, even if each thing just takes 20 seconds or so, you have like completely worn yourself out, and it took a long time to get it done. Whereas if we actually work as a team, these things all get done a whole lot faster. If we have one person for each task and everybody does their own tasks, it all gets done a whole lot faster. So I made this illustration, and I don't know, for some reason it's not working right because all those dones at on that last animation were supposed to come at the same time. But you get the idea that if everybody's doing their one piece, we can move much faster, where we're not waiting. You know, we have here the ED doctor at the head of the patient doing a quick ABC assessment. We have the neurologist standing on one side of the patient doing the NIH. We have phlebotomy on the other side drawing blood. The nurse, and if there's two IVs, the nurse is on one side checking the patency of the IV, and phlebotomy is on the other side drawing blood, or, you know, whatever needs to be done. But everybody's doing their part. And we're doing it all at the same time. We're doing our tasks in parallel, or doing them concurrently, rather than waiting for each little step to get done. And so we choreographed it like the pit crews that we see on TV. They practice that. They know which way they're going around the car and everything else, so they're not out there running into each other. So it's something that you have to, you know, kind of choreograph like a dance and get everybody on the same page. And again, you know, I just took a page out of the trauma playbook, because they even here at Grady, they video the trauma team doing a trauma code, and then they look back and see, were you out of place? Did this, and did this slow somebody else down or whatever? So those things need to be applied also to stroke alerts. So the other thing that I discovered is that you've got to be very specific with these people. Because if you set up this whole thing and it's all choreographed and everybody's, you have this fairy tale story where everything happens exactly as it says in the education, and this is what this is what I'm supposed to be doing now. I can't do anything else. I have to do this. And so we wanted to avoid leaving the patient on the CT table for an extended period of time. So if it was an uncooperative patient and they couldn't get the NIH, if we couldn't get an IV, if anything that delayed the process, once the non-con was done, the patient had to be taken off the table. And so we made that very clear up front, because we have other patients. We do our CTs in the emergency room, and we have other patients waiting for those tables. So it's really important that we don't tie them up. And that was very important to radiology when we were coming, when we were all meeting and getting ready for it. So little things like that we came up with, and we put reminders throughout the education. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the education and show you some of the stuff that we did. But we put those reminders in there to remind you that, yes, this is this happy little fairy tale story, and if everything goes perfectly, this is how it'll work. But you and I both know that it never goes perfectly. There's always some crazy thing that's going to happen that's going to muck up all your works. So we tried to think of those ahead and tried to address them in the education. So we did it, since I did the race car thing, I did kind of the little road thing, but made a stop for everything and made sure that our time goal for that particular part of the stroke alert process was illustrated, because I want them to know you're not going to stand over here for 15 minutes doing this first part, right? You have 5 minutes. So if you get a 2-minute ETA, then you better be scurrying down the stairs or whatever. It's fine for you to come winded, but it's not fine for you to come late, because then you're making everybody else behind. So once I told them, so this is an example for us and how we do it. Oh, my neurologist didn't make it on the slide. They'll be upset. So how we do it is that I had everybody that participates, that was required to do this education, did the exact same education. And the reason for that is, say here in the triage area, you see that the nurse is supposed to be making sure if they came in with an IV. So at Grady, greater than 85% of our patients come in via EMS. We rarely, we just don't get a whole lot of walk-ins. So for stroke, and so most often they come in with the IV, and we need to make sure it's working or whatever. So the nurse does that. They make sure that there's a tech or somebody to get the CT on down there and the transport monitor. They just park it outside the door. But this is just a really quick stop we're doing here, and usually we're done in about 3 minutes. But if for some reason, say the phlebotomist didn't make it to the stroke alert, the nurse could draw the blood, and the pharmacist, what they're doing during this part is just, they're just coming because there's not really anything for them to do at this point. They can assess the patency of the IV because they know how to do that. They could even start the IV if they needed to. Same with the CT techs if we're over in CT and we need an IV. So everybody knows what everybody else is supposed to be doing, was my point with this whole thing. So that if somebody's held up, if somebody's delayed, and if you guys have ever been to Grady, you know that's a threat if you had to ride the elevator. You may be delayed in arriving in the ED for the stroke alert. So if somebody's delayed, somebody else on the team is prepared to take over their responsibilities. That's why everybody has the same education. Also, say so the emergency room physician, rarely are they the ones that don't show up because we're in the emergency room and there's lots of them. But sometimes the neurologist may be delayed because of the elevator issue. The emergency room department doctor, the emergency physician just carries the patient on, heads down keeps going to CT, starts doing the NIH and stuff, and then they just do a quick warm handoff is whenever we run into the neurologist, and they just swap off. So it's important, I believe, or I've learned from this experience, that having everybody on the same page, everybody knowing what everybody else is doing and why we're doing it and the importance of it and what our goals are and how this change in our process is improving our goals and improving our outcomes. I think it's if they can see the big picture, including, improvements and better outcomes and stuff like that, then it's much better. It's much easier to get buy-in, and they want to do good, and they want it to be, they want our times to be faster and stuff. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But anyway, so this is the first thing. It just kind of gives, this is what everybody that shows up in the ED ambulance bay, this is what they all do. And this, one is my little guy, this is, and then we all head to CT. So that first little part took about 3 minutes, and usually phlebotomy will get, at least get the blood for our point of care labs while we're standing there. And that's my little race car people. They're racing to CT so we can get the get that done as fast as we want. And again, this is just another road stop. So this is where we are in our process. So everybody knows the clock's running up in the corner. So everybody knows this should be done during the first 15 minutes, within 15 minutes of arrival, right? Oops, those little folks got left behind. But anyway, so we get everything set up in the CT. Everybody's there. Anything that wasn't, any of the pre-stuff that wasn't finished, while we were in the ambulance bay or in the hallway on the way to CT can be finished right here. But as soon as it's finished, as soon as that CT tech gets the patient positioned and gets their head taped down, everybody has to get out. And you'll see up on the left-hand side, the CT technologists here, they are in charge of that room. So when they direct people, when they say they're ready and they tell them to leave the room, they have to leave the room. And everybody that took this education is aware of that fact. They're in charge of this process in the room, getting people, when people can go in and when they can't. So this was the setup. And then we have, and then there's another. I told you we put these reminders or these little alert things throughout the education just to remind people that we're not going to be lollygagging and leaving the patient there resting on the CT table. If there's a problem, not that we're really lollygagging, but if we run into an issue or whatever, we have to take them off the table. And then we do the CT, the CT tech's doing that. Everybody else is doing inclusion, exclusion, all the stuff that they're supposed to be doing while the patient's actually getting scanned during that little short time period. And then once that's done, once the non-contrast CT is done, and it's time to make the decision, this has to be done within the first 30 minutes. So what we decided was that at this point in the process, number one, we do advanced imaging on most of our stroke alert patients. So most of our patients are going to get a CTA and CTP, which means the CT tech is going to be out of the control room, setting up the contrast, and that takes a minute or so, right? So at Grady, we're fortunate that our residents and our fellows are with the patient in the emergency department, and they are able to read the CTs themselves. So we don't really have to wait for a radiologist to read. Radiologists read. They do also read them, and they do call and verify the thing. But for the most part, our treatment decision is made on that initial evaluation by the vascular neurologist. So they're going to immediately look at the CT, and while the CT is setting up the contrast, at this point, if the patient didn't come in with an IV, or if there's only one IV, the nurse can try to get another one. Because our rule is if there's only one IV, and I think maybe that's going to pop up in just a sec, but if there's only one IV and alteplase is ordered, the alteplase is administered through that IV. We need to get a different IV if we want advanced imaging or for whatever else we need. That will be the second IV, but if we have a good IV and it's working, we're going to go ahead and start the alteplase, and we're going to delay the CTA, CTP. For the most part, they can get a second IV immediately. But if they can't, again, we can't delay and hold people on the table. So see, there's another one. So they get 2 attempts, 2 quick attempts, and if they can't get it, then they have to pull the patient off the table, go back to the ED, and then once they get their line, they can go back. Sometimes they don't even go all the way back to the ED. Sometimes they just go outside of a room, and then maybe they do one more quick head or something like that. And by that time, they have it, and they can go back in. And then I really, since we were doing the new goals with target stroke, I want them to know what those goals are, right? Because for so long we've been saying, we got to get our TPA in within 60 minutes. So it's not even just that it's just a little bit more accelerated, but it's also if, I remember back when we were just trying to get it under 60 minutes and we didn't even have the 45-minute goal. And so as long as it was 59 minutes, everybody was all excited about it. And so still now our goal is 30 minutes, but in the mindset of the target stroke phase 2, which said, we had to get 50% of our patients within 45 minutes, that if we had a patient that got out to place in 32 minutes, we were beside ourselves. Right? And so nobody's going, okay, what was the delay? What was, because if there was, maybe we had some blood pressure issues, right? And had to give labetalol or whatever we needed. But if you're that fast, if you're 32 minutes, nobody thinks to document those things. So I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that we're 30 minutes now. So if you're above 30 minutes, you need to look back at the process and see where the holdup was, and you need to document it in your notes. So I made a point of making sure that the new goals were evident throughout the education. So this is I just put this in, but this is what they do. Even if we're not going to do advanced imaging on this patient, we're going to go ahead and attempt to get the alteplase started while the patient's on the table. We have now in the CT suite, we have a PAR level in their IV pumps. Now it's only 2, but we do have them there. And when they round in the emergency room checking pump levels and stuff, they also are round in CT. So if one of the pumps has been used or whatever, then when they come back on their rounds, they bring another one to replace it. There's also a phone number right there. So at our institution, pharmacy gives the alteplase, and so we ask them if they give it just a call. It's directly to the person responsible for the IV pumps and let them know that they've used one. Then we don't have to wait for them to round 2 times because they're already aware that we've used one, so they'll bring one to restock it as soon as they're able. And again, all of this stuff sounds very nitpicky and all this stuff, but you have to think about all these things ahead of time and make sure that you've got pumps sitting right there ready for you. Make sure that, that everything that you need is available right there so that you can keep everything moving in a timely manner. So those steps that I just told you about, the alteplase administration, when I talk about it, it seems like it takes a really long time, but that's literally less than 5 minutes usually. We try for about 3 minutes. The physician finishes reading the CT, orders the TPA, the pharmacist is standing there with them ready, and if they've already determined that, okay, if there aren't any contraindications and there's no bleed, we're going to give it, they're ready for it. And as soon as they finish that CT and there's no bleed, they're mixing it. So, so that we're ready. And then they get it started, immediately because we have the pumps in the CT. And like I said, then after they get it started and everything, when they go back out of the room so we can do the CTA and CTP, then they have time to call Central Supply or to call down and to have them make sure that they bring up a new a replacement pump when they make their next rounds. So then also, sorry about that. Also, then, what do we need to do post-imaging, right? Who's responsible for what? One thing that we found, we really we get a lot of thrombectomy cases via transfer. But for the ones from the ED, we were kind of struggling to get through that initial process and get them up to the CT suite and stuff. And one of the things that we, during our process of meeting that the ED nurses brought to our attention actually was, we take the transport monitor down to CT, EMS offloads them onto the table, and then when we're done, we put them on our monitor when EMS takes them off theirs. But then when we get them back to their room, we hook them up to the wall monitor, go put the transport monitor back wherever you got it. And then 5 minutes later, when somebody comes and says they're ready for you to go up to the angio suite, we have to go find another transport monitor. And we have to reverse that process. So, one of the things that was lacking there was a communication from the neurology physician to the nurse saying, this is a potential angio case, we're waiting for the CTP to come back or whatever you're waiting for. And so keep them packaged or, and let the nurse know. And now the nurse knows we're going to keep them on that transport monitor, on that portable oxygen, because we're planning to leave within the next few minutes. And that decreases sometimes as much as 10 minutes, because I don't know if you guys have problems with keeping up with transport monitors, but here those things have legs, and I believe they go on brakes or something, because we'll be running around everywhere, can't find a transport monitor. So just that little things like that you can do and that everybody is aware of really help to shave seconds or minutes off of your process. So the other thing that was happening is that when the people up in the angio suite were ready for the patient, they would call the neurology physician, whether it was the resident or the fellow, whoever was down there with the patient, they will call them. Well, what's happened is once the neurologist has looked at the films, the determination has been made and such, we're so busy that many times there's another stroke alert. So they've already gone off with another patient. So what we did was, it's fine if they want to let the neurologist know, and they weren't even calling them. They were sending them, we have a HIPAA compliant app that we text back and forth in when we have a potential thrombectomy patient and such, so that, everybody can be on the same page. But it doesn't help for the neurologist to be on the same page if they've already left that patient and gone to another one. So what we did was we have it's called the PCC. That's a little office over by the ambulance, the EMS triage area. And we have paramedics in there, and they're the ones that take the calls from the inbound EMS folks coming to the facility. And so they're in communication with everybody. They're the ones that let CT know that the stroke alert has arrived and is on their way. They're the ones that initiate the stroke alert. And so they're just they're the ones that kind of keep the ball moving. And kind of try to help coordinate people. So what the other thing that we did is, now the primary call should go to the PCC from the angio suite, because they not only are the ones that coordinate, everything else, they also, are sitting in front of the computer so they can see, oh, the patient's not in the CPR room anymore. They've moved them down to this room in zone 2. But wherever it is, they know where that is. And they let the nurses in whatever area the patient is in, they let those nurses know that angio is ready for them so they can go ahead and get the patient upstairs. And so, those kind of identifying those kind of issues, like we're notifying the wrong person. So it's taken a while for it to get back to the bedside where the patient is, that they're ready for them to go. And those things cause delays. So it's really important that you identify them and that you come up with solutions for whatever they are. And believe me, I'm not saying that we've come up with all the solutions, because I'm going to show you our data in just a second, and you will see. Okay, so again, this is a change in goal, right? Because even though groin puncture is not on the new target stroke goals, we know our door to retrieval time is, right? So in order for us to be able to get a door to retrieve, door to first, I call it door to first pass still, but it's revascularization, I guess, the first attempt at revascularization. And so in order for us to get that done within 90 minutes, because, the target stroke goal for that, for a patient arriving in the ED, is 90 minutes, when Joint Commission says our groin puncture time is supposed to be 90 minutes. So how you're supposed to get both of those done within 90 minutes is beyond me. So after discussion, we decided that in order to meet the 90-minute requirement, we needed a door to groin puncture within 60 minutes. So that allows us to get the patient, get access, in case there's problems getting in, gaining access, in case there's tortuous vessels, and they're having some kind of issues like that. That gives us 30 minutes to kind of play with. So, so our goal for patients arriving from the emergency room to Grady, for door to groin puncture, is 60 minutes or less. Okay, so you don't need to read all of these. This is just the other thing. You really can't do a slide to address every single thing that's going to happen. But there's some crazy stuff like, I would come and we would be standing there waiting because somebody was getting an IV. And I said, why are we getting an IV right now? Well, it's a stroke alert. They don't have one. Well, we don't need one for a non-contrast CT, right? And that's the first thing that we should be getting. We should, and en route to that, we should be checking the blood sugar, right? Those are the things that we need to check. And on that fact, by the way, just while I'm talking about that, is, your stroke alert orders and your time requirements and everything are based on your stroke alert orders. The only thing on our stroke alert orders is imaging and glucose. Now, we did go back and add in dysphagia screen just because sometimes it kind of gets left, it was getting forgotten about, so we went back and put that. That doesn't really have to be done immediately, but what we wanted was, number one, it also decreases the amount of time that it takes to put the orders in. So now, if the patient's en route, the nurse can put the patient, if we already know who they are and have pre-registered them, or if we've assigned them to a stat pack number, the nurse can go ahead and put those in. And we have made that a protocol order set in the emergency room with just those things on it, just the imaging and the blood glucose, because that's what we need. We need a head CT, and we need to know that our blood glucose is okay. Now, we may have some other lab values that are out of whack, and if they are, when they're reported, we'll turn the out to place off if it's indicated. But as far as making a decision for treatment, we don't need all those things. Just like we don't need an IV to get a non-contrast CT, right? If we get there and do that non-contrast CT and their stroke's already completed, we didn't need to waste those 3 minutes starting an IV that could have been started while we were putting contrast in or whatever, setting up the contrast. We could have just the stroke's completed. We just take the patient off the table and we can start that IV as soon as we get back to the ED. But we don't need to do it on the front end. If it's going to delay us, even if it's going to delay us 1 minute getting to CT, we need to avoid that. So anyway, whatever questions that your people always come up with, this is where I address if the patient only has one IV, and they order out to place while the patient's in the CT scanner, and they're wanting to get advanced imaging. If they don't get another IV, do we just let them use that IV? No, because what if they blow that IV when they start trying to inject the contrast? Now, not only do we not have advanced imaging, but we've also lost our access for the alteplase. So that initial access is used for treatment of blood pressure, so that we can, if the blood pressure is too high for us to administer alteplase, and then it is used for alteplase, and then we have to get another line. If they can't get it, like I said, in a time-efficient manner, then we need to take them back to the ED and get the line and then come back in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or however long that is. But whatever questions you get on a routine basis, you can address, but make sure you address them. So I'm going to not hold out much hope that this video is going to play, since it didn't play last time. Nope. Maybe. Nope, it's not going to play. So anyway, and so what I was trying to impart in all the education and in all of the time that we really spent, we met weekly for 2.5 months to change the protocol and decide how we were going to do everything. And it was all about how can we be efficient as a team rather than efficient as an individual. Even though we like to think that we're superheroes and we can do it all, when you're talking about seconds being the difference, seconds and minutes being the difference between someone being independent and not, we need to do it as quickly as we can. And so really drilling down and identifying those little things that stretch your time out by 2 or 3 minutes, you can really make a difference. And the other reason that we chose the pit crew thing is that they are a team. They are part of the team. So that was very important to make sure that this is a team sport. This is not an individual. This is not golf. This is a team sport, right? So let's see. All right, so you can see here, I don't even know what, oh, yes. Okay, so this is so the red is mean and the gray is our median door to needle times. So you see that we went from right at 43 down to 41, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but you'll see in a minute when you see our target stroke stuff that made a big difference, because we were already doing pretty well. Once we got everybody on board with the 45-minute thing, we were doing really good with that. And then as you'll see also, we're not doing so great with the 30-minute one yet, I don't think. But since Get With the Guidelines, that reporting for the target stroke is still not correct for the 30-minute measure. So you don't really know how you're doing, because it's not excluding the patients that should be excluded and that sort of thing. So it's kind of a crapshoot how we're doing on that right now. I'll have to wait and see. Now, our door to groin puncture times, you see from the ED, we were at about 66 minutes, I think, in 2018, and we're down now to around 60. So these are our door to groin puncture median times. So you can see that. Oh, here we are. No, so 55 and down to 50. I'm confused because of the way that I set this graph up. I was trying to do it in a hurry, sorry. But yeah, so it's actually is working very well. Okay, so here's the target stroke stuff. Wait a minute. Oh, there it is. Okay, so you see here on our target stroke stuff, our 60 minutes, we're above 90% for the 60 minutes. I mean, almost everybody gets it within 60 minutes. Our 45, we're above the 75% for that. We're okay with that. But you see now, this is reported from Get With The Guidelines, so I'm hoping that this is not correct. I did go back and pull some out of the denominator that I knew for sure, because maybe they got it in 48 minutes. And so I knew if they were excluded from the 45-minute measure for with a documented reason for delay, that they would be excluded from the 30-minute measure. Those patients I went ahead and took out. But otherwise, we're only at 20%. So our award for this year is in jeopardy because of that measure. So we are really doing a big push here at the end of the year and trying to get everybody on board and making them aware. Most of the time, if we don't get it within 30 minutes, there's an actual acceptable reason. If we may have had trouble getting in touch with family members to verify last known normal or something like that, and if they may talk about it in their note, how they couldn't get in touch with somebody, but it's that whole educating your medical staff that they have to do. We need a direct cause and effect statement for delays in order to exclude the patient. So that's the big thing that we're working on. Our times, and I'm not sure if yeah, there it is. So you see our median time in 2019 right now is 41 minutes. So if that's our median time, you see that we have lots that are less than that. But we just are having, I can't accurately judge the 30-minute measure. Like I said, with the guidelines is still not reporting it correctly. But I'd hate for us to miss it because, I guess if we had been working on it harder, because we do have multiple patients that get it within 30 minutes. But anyway, as you see, it hasn't been the answer to all, but it has significantly reduced our door to groin puncture and even our door to needle, mean and median times. So, I think the important thing to get from this is the more, we say that it's a team activity. We say that stroke is an emergency, and we say these things and say these things. But again, if there's a patient sitting there having a heart attack with those big old tombstones on their EKG that you can see, and somebody is having a stroke and they're aphasic, laying there quietly, they're still not judged as much of an emergency.
So that's what kind of we're trying to overcome. And then we need to approach it like a true emergency by a team. And teams practice. All teams practice. If you don't practice and you don't know what your role is, you are not part of a team. So anyway, that's all.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Cathi. That was excellent. Absolutely awesome. So we do have a few minutes to answer some questions, and we do have a couple questions that are already in the chat box for you. So one of the first questions is, how did you communicate with the EMS agencies that transport to Grady? What communication systems do you all use?
Okay, so first of all, we emailed them out a notice when we started doing direct to EMS. So we sent an email out to the leaders for them to disseminate that to their, this is for everybody other than Grady. I mean, Grady, we made sure they knew. Then the second thing we did was we put signs on the ED door reminding them that if this is a stroke patient, we would appreciate them accompanying us to the CT suite before unloading the patient. And so they've actually ended up, at first there was some speculation that there might be a problem with it because it may increase their time on scene, but it's actually done the reverse. Because when we were stopping in that room before we went to CT, EMS would give the report would start giving the report to the nurse as soon as they came in the room. Then the ED doctor would come in and they'd have to start over. Then the neurologist would show up and they'd have to start over. So they're ending up doing this, 2 or 3 times. And so just the fact that everybody's standing there waiting on them, and they can give the report one time has really actually decreased their time on scene. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention before, and I had meant to put a picture of this in there and meant to do it this morning, and of course I forgot all about it, is another thing that has really improved morale and really kind of set up a little friendly competition is that I send out, so for every treatment time that is less than the requirement. So for every treatment time, every out-to-place time that is less than 60 minutes, and every growing puncture that is less than 90 minutes, I send out, we call it a stroke hero email. And it recognizes every single person on the team, starting with the EMS providers that delivered the patient, all the way through. I mean, it includes the CT tech, it includes the nurse, includes the phlebotomist that drew the lab, the ED physician. I mean, everybody that was part of that team is included on the email. And even if they go for thrombectomy, even the anesthesia team is on there. So everybody. So I think it's important that you recognize people and acknowledge when they're doing a good job. And when you do that, it's a positive. You get a positive reaction from that because they want to keep getting that recognition. They want to do a good job. So sorry, that was a very long answer, but I forgot about that other part for them.
No problem. That was great feedback. Also, if anyone else is on the line that has any questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. There is a comment here, and it says the 30-minute out-to-place measure will be fixed with the Get With The Guideline S update scheduled for December 11. You should not have to do anything to the records you have already abstracted. The fix will correct those already entered. And that is from...
That's from me, Denise. It's Shelley.
That was going to be my guess. It sounded like so I knew that it was that the fix was coming. I just didn't know when.
And it should, like I said, it should for those charts that you've already abstracted, it should self-correct. So apologize to everybody for the delay, but let me know if y'all have any questions.
Yeah, I think that the big thing is that people just were not aware that it wasn't working correctly.
Right.
And so you never really knew. And then once everybody found out, it's like you don't know whether you're meeting or not, meeting the measures. And so it's hard to make decisions to make any corrections or changes in the process when you don't know if you even need it, you know?
Right. I understand. Should be next week. You're welcome.
Are there any other questions from anyone on the line? Okay, if we don't have one, I do have one more that was entered into the chat. And the question is, did the same person for each role come to each meeting, or did they substitute staff on the team? So like, was it the same?
No,
Mm-hmm.
No, they substituted. Because they wanted, it was really important, especially with the ED, that we have nursing input. And then, you know, it was a big change of role for the ED physician because we had been stopping in that room for so long that they really wanted input in the process. And, you couldn't get very many of them on one day because of working schedules and whatever. So I would send out minutes of the meetings, and they would forward them to whoever in their department would be coming to the next meeting if the same person didn't come. So we were able to get different CT techs, different people from the lab, different people, so that we could really examine and look at, what our problems were or where the barriers might be so that we could try to correct them on the front end, if possible. So I would suggest, I know it's very hard, especially with frequent meetings, getting them. I've had this problem, of course, my whole career, as I'm sure all of you do, and especially in a project like this where you're really wanting to get ahead of it sooner rather than later, is that if you do really good minutes and send them out to your participants, and then they can forward them on to whoever will be representing the last time, so they can get caught up on the process and where you're at in the process and provide meaningful feedback. So I think it's important to do that. And you have to, you're the one that needs to make concessions. This is your project. So that if they have to send a different person every time, you need to come up with a way that they can fully participate and provide that meaningful discussion that you need without starting at zero every meeting.
That makes sense. Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions in the chat box. We do have just one more minute if someone wants to ask a question that hasn't been asked. Terry, did you have anything? Anything else?
The only thing that I wanted to ask Cathi was, which performance improvement quality tools did you use for your improvements? Cathi, are you there?
I'm not real sure what you're talking about.
Did you use a PBSA module, or did you use?
Oh, yes. No, yes, I did PBSA.
Okay.
So, yes. So we, like I told you on the front end, we had those meetings. We came up with the new protocol. We circulated the protocol, with all the little nuances and requirements in it to several people for comment before we finalized it, and then developed the education. Then we had a month where we did mock stroke alerts using the new protocol before we actually went live with it, because we had multiple days on multiple shifts to try to get as many of the participants as we could. And we did it like a real stroke alert. We had a patient in bed, they had to put them on the CT table, whole thing, just like it was a regular patient, so that they would do it, so they would be able to do it. And so we got feedback from that and made a few additional changes. And then we got feedback when we first started. We tried to make sure there was an additional person from the department at every stroke alert to kind of sit back and look. And then we tried doing a briefing, even just a briefing, or a, what do you call it in this code? Not a briefing. Yeah, a debrief. Even just a sheet or something. But it was the fact that, number one, there was nobody to be in charge of the sheet. So where is it? Who's going to provide it? Who's going to make sure everybody does it? Where's it going to end up? There's the big question now that everything's electronic. So, and because these participants are participating at different times in the process. Like I said earlier, the phlebotomist comes in first and leaves. So what I did rather than that was sent emails to the managers for them to send out to their staff with contact information on it in case you have a problem. That contact information is posted in the ED as well and in the CT scan room. So if a problem comes up or if they notice something that's an issue, they can immediately email or call to report it, since we haven't figured out a good way to do the debriefing process yet. But yeah, and so from that feedback that we got, again, we made some changes. I mean, one of the big changes that we made was to get that stock of IV pumps in the CT room. And even though we have on them that they're for out to place only, but I'm going to say that if there's a trauma patient on the table bleeding out or whose blood pressure is taking, who needs our pump, they'll take it and use it. But that's why we also put the phone number on there in the hopes that, if they do take it, then they'll call and let them know. But even if not, they round multiple times a day in the emergency room, and every time they round in the emergency room, they go into CT to verify that we have pumps there. So that was one of the issues that we identified in that PBSA model, where we were getting that feedback from the people actually doing the work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cathi, for answering those questions and for giving just an awesome presentation. We really appreciate you taking time away from your busy schedule to do that. And thank you. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback about your presentation. So, and we appreciate everyone asking questions. And if you have any other questions for Cathi, I'll be glad to share her email with you all. And also just a reminder, we will have another Coverdell call next Monday, December the 9th, and Dr. Frankel will be giving an update to the AHAASA, the update to the 2018 guidelines for the early management of AIS. So we've been getting a lot of questions about that. So next Monday at 12, we will be having another Coverdell call. So if you have not received the link for that call, please email me and I can resend the link to you. And we will go ahead and close the call out. We're just a few minutes after 1. If you have any other questions, just let me know. Email me. This call has been recorded, so we will share the link with you so that you can share it with your teams and other people who were not able to make the call. Thank you again, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.